often think about Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt, not recognizing that there are another 50 countries on the continent. And for me personally, as the CEO of Numida and the one responsible for finding the resources to achieve our vision, this has obviously been a major challenge from a fundraising and storytelling, and also from a talent acquisition perspective. And the way that I have kind of presented the opportunity is, one, when you think about a country like Uganda, I believe it is much more representative of the rest of the continent than, for example, a country like Nigeria is, or a country like South Africa or Egypt. And so being able to build a business here that has strong economics, that has strong growth, that is addressing real problems, is a very good story when it comes to market expansion and going to other markets. I really do believe that if you can succeed in Uganda, you can succeed in any market on the continent. And for us, we have recently expanded to Kenya at the beginning of the year, and the performance has been fantastic. And I think, maybe Lipa later is an exception. I think when Kenyan companies come to the Uganda market, they struggle because it is so different. And I think we have an advantage by building here first. When we go to Kenya, when we go to Tanzania, when we go to Zambia, when we go to Ghana, these markets are far more similar to each other. And the opportunity across these markets is massive. From the second question around talent, yeah, I think this is actually fundamentally one of the biggest challenges in Uganda when it comes to building companies at scale, is finding and attracting the right talent to be able to do that. And that's, I would say probably problem number one is raising the financial resources, but then once you have the money, where do you get the talent from is the other question. And I think that's where, you're gonna start seeing, I think, a lot more talent. We've hired, talent from across the continent who has moved to Uganda with us. And we've also hired, a significant number of Ugandans and have, built their capacity throughout time, and that's proving very effective. So it's definitely no easy feat.
Thank you. I think wow, we have quite a few. Can someone send a mic on this side?
Thank you. Mina, my question is, what are your limiting factors that prevent you having the success of an M-Pesa in Kenya, for example? What is your limiting factor?
So what is your limiting factor?
Is it resource? Is it financial resource? Is it human resource? Is it market challenges different?
Yeah, this is a difficult question because we're not a mobile money product, so we're not a consumer-based product. So I think it's a little bit different. I think for us, the challenges are the same that every startup faces, which is access to financial resources, access to talent, and then regulatory, constraints that kind of prevent you from moving as fast as you want to grow. Do you want to add some thoughts?
One new thing is FX risk. So we've really been hit by foreign exchange losses. As, for example, in Kenya, there's a degradation of the Kenyan shilling against the dollar. And I think this is happening across the continent, in Nigeria, in Uganda. So I think that is a very new challenge that has really affected us across the board, especially if you've raised particularly dollar debt like we did. And so having to really figure out how to refinance that in local currency. And of course, with different people in different industries, if you're talking about trade and agriculture, if you're talking about manufacturing, I think that is a risk and a problem that affects, the economy at large. So I just wanted to add to that.
Maybe if I can ask a question, which is probably linked to just what you mentioned. We're speaking a lot about de-dollarization of trade, which I think it's a big impediment today for ensuring intra-Africa trade, which, if I'm not mistaken, is less than 5% of global trade at the moment. My question, probably not directly linked to what's happening in Uganda, or maybe Uganda can be the epicenter to solve this problem. Can fintech solve the problem of de-dollarization, ensuring that we can have remittances and payments seamless across the continent without going for the dollar or other hard currencies?
Go for it.
So I'll just give my 2 cents on that question. That is something that will really need a unification across the whole continent. It's not something that is particularly faced from a country-to-country basis. That is a unification from a continental basis. And with that being said, there's a lot more that has to be done from a private and public sort of like partnership and understanding, which is part and parcel of what this Africa Science Week is trying to do, to be able to solve these problems. So I don't think fintechs in and of itself can resolve that, because there's going to be, for example, regulatory impediments to trying to make a resolution that would have a long-lasting effect. So for me, and my 2 cents on this matter is that we will all have to chime in. We all have a part to play in actually trying to prevent or hedge that loss. So I'll just open it up to anyone else who has a different answer.
Hello. In terms of porting, that is moving a fintech service from one country to the other, one of the major challenges that you're going to find is, number one, just like my presenters have identified, is currency fluctuation. That's number one. Number two is to find a way of regularizing the currency, because once you have a platform here and you take that platform to DRC, how is it going to work in terms of is the regulator? We are regulated by different bodies. Maybe at a different level, you have the central banks have a consensus to allow certain transactions. So it is not only fintechs, but the regulatory arms do play a significant role in such a situation. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm being ushered to wrap up. I know there's a lot of more questions. If there are any other questions, bombard these people. I do need to wrap up. We do have another panel coming up, but thank you guys so much for a great panel. Thank you guys for your questions. And yeah, I think we've got panel number 4 coming up now.
So give it up for Ruby from Greenhouse Capital. She has a flight to catch, so we have to be very grateful that she gave us the time to stay with us. If you want to talk to her, I'm sure she's walking straight to the car and off to the airport, so you only have 30 meters to do it. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And please just come for the photo as we prepare for the next panel. And as we do that, I'm trying to make sure that we can wrap up right on program. Please be careful. Right on program. And we told you we'd be doing deals today, so we're doing one more deal. Greenhouse Capital is signing a commitment, a letter of intent with the Ministry of Science and Technology for the development of Greenhouse Labs. I'm going to ask Kumi in 1 minute to tell us what Greenhouse Labs is and why it's important. And then we will ask Honorable Minister to join us at the deal table for the signing.
Thank you, David. Greenhouse Labs is really an incubation acceleration platform that's seeking to go to the early stage ideation, where you have people with good ideas. How do you capture and catch them young? How do you give them a platform to express their ideas? We give them all of the tools required for them to be able to go through boot camps, learn about businesses, how to write a business plan, how to express yourself, how to read a balance sheet, the whole nine. So preparing you for business, helping you to think through the strategy of your business, and then helping you to scale your business. So once you're admitted into Greenhouse Labs, there's a funnel, so there's probably going to be thousands and thousands of applications. We'll narrow it down to a few, and then they'll go through a 6-month boot camp. And then the successful participants, having gone through that boot camp, would now be shipped over to Silicon Valley to do another 6 months. And then once they're done, they'll be investable and investor ready. And we'll open them up to the general public for investment. So this is how you groom the next generation of billion-dollar Ugandan-owned companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kumi. The only thing I had was Ugandan companies going to Silicon Valley and $1 billion. I've never had this many billions in one day. You know, it's $1 billion here, $1 billion there. We're used to billion shillings. It's easy to be a billionaire in Uganda, you know. You just have to have about $240,000 in you. So if you have that, you're a billionaire.
Science, technology and innovation. Science, technology and innovation. Have you heard about science, technology and innovation? Gasiria formula balance equation. Gabiri kumula mwakwa kuchuza si. Mumumpipi transformation. Kugasia wongo ya assurance. Kukwa musada importance. Emikwano jigambe banabe tukende borwawo musanga Uganda tusimude.
This is the third deal of the day, so we've had 3 signings so far, and I think this is a great win for Uganda. The first one was a contract between Nextera Capital and StartHub Uganda to offtake pipeline and invest in some of the ventures that StartHub has, between $100,000 and $300,000 for each of these ventures. The next was a $1.6 million fund that has been committed to Uganda Development Bank to invest in 8 companies. So UDB is operating as fund manager. And the third is Greenhouse Capital and the Science and Technology Secretariat. And what this is going to do is allow the creation of greenhouse labs in Uganda that will incubate and accelerate Ugandan ventures. I had everything. All I remember is Silicon Valley and $1 billion. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister and Kumi from Greenhouse Capital. Please just come to the front and exchange the document. I suggest you just hold it.
Science, technology and innovation. Science, technology and innovation. Have you heard about science, technology and innovation? Gasiria formula balance equation. Gabiri kumula mwakwa kuchuza si. Mumumpipi transformation. Kugasia wongo ya assurance.
There it is. I want to ask Kumi, how soon do we have the office set up?
Science, technology and innovation. Science, technology and innovation. Have you heard about science, technology and innovation?
Great. Thank you very much. Incidentally, Kumi is a busy man today. We've had a series of conversations, and what we're doing now is going into the detail of opportunities, so sector-specific opportunities. We've discussed fintech, and I mean, you've had, where to focus, what to invest in, what's popping really. The other sector that's very interesting for the world right now and very important is climate. So climate change, mitigation, adaptation, and technology and innovation plays a very strong part to this. When you see Kira Motors at the back there, the reason why Kira Motors makes sense is that using electronic buses can greatly eliminate carbon emissions. So I'd like to invite Kumi to invite his panel and take us through a quick panel on climate tech, and what are the opportunities, areas to focus on, and how to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Okay, this is going to be a really exciting panel because of everything that David has said. This is really the future of the world. If we don't pay attention to climate change, then everything we've talked about today doesn't exist, won't make sense, right? We need to be responsible in our actions to ensure that we live on a planet that we can live for the next generation. So I'll quickly call on the panelists. Tukam from Persistent Capital, please come up front. Thank you, round of applause. Yvonne, could you please join him? Yvonne from ANA Collective. Peter Ndichu from Catalyst Fund. Paul, our CEO of Chira Motors. Paul, please come up. Take any seats that you see. There are 6 of them. Abel from Nova Star. Abel, please come up. And last but not the least, Kevin Simmons. Kevin, welcome all. Can we have a second mic on this stage, please, if we're going to use a cordless mic? Please take a seat. Thank you. Would appreciate a second mic so we can pass it around and make this session real quick. Okay, all right. Okay, maybe we'll do a quick mic check. Could you turn it on, each of you? And
check.
Testing?
Testing. Peter.
Okay.
Check.
Good?
Yeah, good.
Okay, good. So all the mics are working. Could I please have you turn it off when you're not speaking so we don't have feedback? And that way we can actually have good acoustics. Okay, great. So the goal of this session is really simple. Really, it's to raise awareness, right? And then sensitize folks about the importance of climate change and climate technologies. So, of course, you've heard about clean tech, green initiatives in Africa, everything from renewable energy, right, to e-mobility, to waste management, green construction, green cooking, green cooling, smart agriculture, right? The list goes on and on and on. These are initiatives that are out there to help preserve our environment. But the question is it profitable? Can we make money from doing the right thing? And so our panelists here have either been investing in clean technologies in one way or the other, or have been advocating for green technology. So we'd like to hear them out on some of the things that they've done. First question is general, right? And I'll have each person go maybe for 20 seconds each. These are going to be pointed questions. We can maybe take questions later after from the audience, but the first question goes as follows. There are so many things people could be investing in today. So the question is, why climate tech? What makes it investable? And why is it exciting? So I'll start from my right. Many things to invest in. Why climate tech? Why is it investable? And why is it exciting?
So I think there's a lot of things going on the continent that supports climate tech solutions. One of them is rapid urbanization happening on the continent, rapid population growth, and Africa is obviously building everything from scratch essentially, and so there's a way in which we could build, let's say, whether it's our buildings, whether it's our transportation, in a clean way, and you could derive good returns out of that. So examples of companies I've seen in this space that are really doing well, like Sun King, M-Copper, Coco Networks, very profitable companies tackling this climate challenge. And these are local examples in Kenya and across the region.
Thank you very much. That's Abel from Nova Star. They're active investors in climate tech. Yes, I'll turn it over to Tukam, who is also an investor in climate tech. So the question again is, so many things to invest in. Why climate tech? Why do you think it's investable? And why is it exciting?
Very three quick answers, right? Why climate tech? I think it's a question of survival. If we don't want to be around in the next, 100 years, or our kids, then let's not do it. Why is it investable? The unit economics makes sense in most of the things we've looked at. And why is it exciting? I think for me it's exciting because, it's doing, I think you said it in the beginning, it's doing the right thing as well, right? So it's not only a good thing to do from an investment perspective, it's exciting to do the right thing in a way that's sustainable.
Thank you. Yvonne?
Yeah, I think building up what Abel and Tukam have said, climate tech, first of all, to know is climate tech is broad and touches across a lot of sectors that literally affect everyday lives. So if you think about things around agriculture, think around things around waste management, recycling, think about things around clean cooking. These are things that pretty much people use every single day to survive. The why is simply because, I mean, we need to build it for us to actually be able to survive. Is it investable? It is, from more of the points that Tukam has listed, but also of the fact that I think a lot of these solutions are actually being developed newly. So there is an opportunity for us to build these new infrastructure for ourselves and for the continent, the way that it needs to work on the continent as well. Yeah.
Well, you've heard the common theme is it's a matter of survival. That's the reason why this sector is very important. It's a matter of survival. Let's hear it from Peter.
Yeah. Over and above what the rest of the panelists have said, I think when you think about the problem that the world is experiencing, you know, Africa is not contributing as much to the problem of the issues that are leading to climate change, but we really have an opportunity to be part of the solution, right? We have some of the youngest population in the world. The entrepreneurship ecosystem is vibrant, so I think it then makes sense for us to be part of the solution. And then looking at the funding gap that we are seeing in emerging economies when it comes to solving for climate adaptation and resilience, I think it makes sense for more of us investors to actually be part of the solution. I think some of the stats point that we need about 10x more funding to actually start to address some of the financing gaps we're seeing in climate. So that's why for us it's really important to be playing a role in this space and this asset class. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. We'll go to Paul. Paul is a manufacturer of one of the solutions, so we'd like to hear from you.
When you think about climate tech, I think one of the most important things that comes out is as we meet the needs of humanity today, are we mindful of meeting the needs of humanity tomorrow? When I use fossil, at one point it will run out, forgetting about the environmental impact it leaves behind. When I use renewable, it's renewable. And that speaks to the business case. That speaks to the excitement that humanity will be sustained if we go for climate change.
Thank you very much, Paul. Kevin?
Well, I feel a little bit lonely here because I'm probably the only one that doesn't think it's a matter of survival, or rather, at Lofty Capital, we don't view it through a climate lens. We don't separate climate from regular business. The kind of businesses that we believe are worthwhile investing in are businesses that address a significant demand. And the analogy we like to use is it's a really good business to invest in would be an umbrella business in the desert when it starts raining cats and dogs. And so for that reason, recognizing that globally there is a demand for climate technology and products that do better, and it's a growing demand. So for that reason, we believe that climate investments have a real commercial bottom line beyond just that it's good for the planet. We think it's just good business.
All right, okay, great. So we'll go into more climate finance because I'm sure most of you have heard of a term called carbon credits, right? Carbon credits seems to be the new buzzword. People are taking over large expanse of land, displacing human beings just because they want carbon credits, right? So, and in my experience from the Africa Climate Summit that was just held in September in Nairobi, which is Africa's response to the subject, a lot of billions of dollars were committed at that summit. Billions and billions of dollars, right? So my question is, with all of this money committed, how can Africa get a respectable chunk of it so that we're not just spectators again, but we're actually active participants this time? Abel?
So I think I've had to go through an education over the last 2 years around the carbon credit markets. And for me, despite all the negativity around, carbon credit markets, especially on the voluntary side, I believe we as a continent could actually use it to our benefit. And one of the things countries like Uganda or Kenya or whatever it is could actually do is create an enabling environment for carbon trading in your existing countries, and then also bilateral agreements with governments that, in the West or in the global North, where you're able to expose your companies or sell your carbon credits to those markets. But I think of importance is, there's a lot of organizations doing all these carbon credit projects, but then the returns or the revenues from those carbon credits don't actually get to the people who need to benefit from this. And so as governments or as Africans, I think we need to be part of that, and we need to make sure that whatever carbon credit revenue that is being generated is actually getting to the farmer or to the local person on the ground. And I've seen Kenya and a few other countries that have come up with regulations around this to enable or to ensure that whatever is generated actually gets to the community and is used in a productive way to, help people obviously be more resilient to climate change in that case. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Abel. And this is really important because Africa is seen as the carbon sink of the world, right? So we are really the solution to all of the carbon climate issues today. So how Africa benefits from it and how it trickles down to the communities is extremely important. It's really a matter of principle. And so we need our leaders to be able to make the decisions on how this wealth is distributed equitably. Now, I think I'll just go to, I think, Tukam, let me ask you a question because you're an investor, right? And this is now taking it to the average Ugandan, right? So they hear of carbon credits and all of these billions of dollars, but they can't relate to it. How can the local Ugandan climate tech startup that's innovating something very simple in the village, how can they be connected to capital? What do they need to do to make themselves attractive to investors like you?
Thank you very much. I think that's a tough question, but I think so two things. One is there are quite a few programs, I think like the ones you guys do at Green Tech, right? That's helping some of these companies get ready for investment. So I think that's very important to do that. I would say two, and this is probably a bit controversially, persistence in this sense and focusing on your customers, right? One of the things I see as an investor is you have a lot of companies that are doing this thing, but they're really grand running and writing organizations. They're not businesses, right? And that is not to say, look, there isn't a space for that. It's just saying, look, if you want to run a nonprofit, I think, do that. If you want to run a business, it's a bit of a different thing. But I do see a lot of that where you spend more time delighting investors than delighting your customers, right? And that means ultimately you have a business that is not sustainable. And from my perspective, that means not investable.
Thank you very much. I was watching something on CNN the other day, and it showed a lady in Kenya collecting plastic bottles, right? So, of course, we know the issues of plastic and plastic waste. And what she was doing was taking it and making it into a slurry and then using it for paving stones, right, for road construction. I thought it was an amazing, amazing idea and something that I will put money into if I was just investing emotionally. But then I heard another side of it, and someone came on and said, yes, while it might look good on paper, this is really encouraging the guys who are emitting and creating the plastic bottles in the first place a way out. So there usually has to be a balance. Are you incentivizing bad behavior by coming up with creative ways of using it, or is it the other way around? So I'll go to Yvonne. My next question is also in line of how do we manage these issues. But I know you're into food security. So I'm going to ask you something related to agriculture, because obviously climate-smart agriculture is now becoming a thing. By the way, how many of you guys know that agriculture is one of the biggest producers of greenhouse gases and carbon emissions? Right? It is really, it's a lot. But the issue is we have to eat, we have to survive. So how do we balance those two issues? It's a really tricky one for Yvonne, but I know you can handle it. So what kinds of technologies should we be investing in to make sure that balance is right?
Yeah, thank you. You're right. That's a bit of a difficult question that I think we've been trying to answer on the continent in a number of ways. But I think that some of the ways that we can balance trying to reduce emissions, but then also increasing pretty much agricultural production on the continent, because at the end of the day, we need to produce a lot more of our own food, right? Instead of importing food, because that's also another thing that's unfortunately making a lot of countries poor. But I think that is just incorporating a lot more, I would say, energy efficient practices. Like, let's say if you're farming on a large scale piece of land and you look at irrigation, are you using renewable resources to actually power your irrigation pumps? Or are you still using diesel and generators, right? So starting from little things like that to even, let's say the power, if you're looking at large scale commercial agriculture, what kind of power sources are you actually using to power some of the, if it pivot systems or even tractors that are being used on the farm? Unfortunately, there's a lot of technology that we probably don't have on the continent, and there's a lot of things that still need to be developed. But I think starting to think about what is the back-end power that is actually used to pretty much put into a lot of the equipment that is used to produce the food on the ground is a good way to start. But then also now thinking about even more innovative solutions where we can use less, I would say, carbon emitting resources like diesel and fuel, and start using alternative resources like solar, or even wind sources, or even, I guess, non-diesel powered irrigation systems to actually make sure that we're producing food locally. That's one way, and I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of other ways to actually answer that.
Thank you, Yvonne. So Yvonne is suggesting that when it comes to the processing side of food production, that we should look and consider alternative sources of energy. How do we power this equipment, these machines? Maybe we shouldn't use fossil fuels and going to more renewable sources. Okay, all right, great. Peter, you're an active investor. You invest in clean technologies. Can you tell us what you're actively investing in and why?
Okay, yeah, happy to provide a few examples. So in our case, when we think about climate tech, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yeah. So in our case, when we think about climate tech, we mainly think about it in three main pillars. The first one is what we've already been discussing, and that's really around financing mechanisms that can enable climate tech businesses. And here you can think about insurtech businesses, insurance that is targeting, for example, agtech sector, insurance that is targeting areas that are prone to like floods and so forth. But also about carbon credits, right? Some of these business models with carbon credits then become feasible. And then secondly, we also think about improving livelihoods, right? So here we are talking about agriculture, as has been referenced. How can we really empower farmers to adapt to the new reality, practice more regenerative agriculture, but also access other tools that are really important to monetizing their model, from markets, reducing post-harvest losses, and so forth. And then thirdly, there is also an infrastructure play that we also see. And this, you can think of this in terms of cold chain. So for example, one of the business we invested in is actually working with fish folks who are getting fish from the market, really helping them transport that fish through cold chain storage, reducing the losses, and as a result, really helping them make a better business case out of what they've already been doing for generations. So for us, we see climate tech as a requirement for us to adapt to the new reality, but also as an opportunity for local entrepreneurs across the continent, across Uganda, Kenya, and the rest of the continent to actually be part of the solution and not just victims of what's really happening in their own backyard. So thank you for that question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Peter. And the key word is how can we take charge and not be victims? There's a lot of opportunity. Where people see problems, they often are opportunities, right? So how do you position yourself to be able to be an opportunity, provide opportunities? I'll go to Paul. Paul, even if, as investors, the group who came here, even if you were blind, we had to experience your solution, your product, one way or the other, because thanks to you, you were shuttling us back and forth from the hotel to the venue. If you didn't exist, we probably have been walking back and forth and lost a few calories. But the way we actually were transported was a bit different. I've been to many conferences, but this is the first one ever where I've been transported on an electric bus. Round of applause for Paul. And your electric bus is actually unique because majority of the parts are actually local. They're actually Ugandan made. Is that correct?
Not yet, but we are getting there.
Okay, all right. So let me ask you a question, because also in the exhibition, I'm not sure how many of you guys have gotten a chance to go around, and if you haven't, please do so. If you go to the e-mobility section, you would see electric everything. Electric bicycles, electric motorcycles, electric three-wheelers. I even saw an electric tractor for the first time in my life, right? And of course, you know, the most prominent display are the electric buses, right? So I was extremely impressed because obviously visually it is very impressive that this is a made in Ugandan, made in Africa product. And so to me, it begs the question, what are you doing right? And what can we learn from that sector?
At Kira Motors Corporation, we are walking the talk. And that is clear, and we've demonstrated by offering the shuttle services for the delegations, especially the investors who are here today. Now, our focus has been on what we call the 4+1 pillars at Kira Motors. One, focusing on the people. You need to have the talent in the right measure and in the right character to get the job done. If that is not there, the job doesn't get done, irrespective of how good the idea is. Secondly, the product. You need to have the product that solves the problem. 82% of the people in the urban centers of Uganda, but also the wider Africa, use mass transit solutions. If you green that, you have a very high chance of contributing to the relevance of climate tech. Third, you talk about the plants. Where are we producing? And what capabilities are you building right there? Of course, we know that 85% of the production opportunity is in the supply chain of parts and material. And we have a lot of work to do there to see that we make many of the parts, especially the battery, locally. We have a target to push that to 65% by 2030. Third, the policies. The policies are very important because without the right policies, you may not be able to be competitive in the domestic and export market. But also importantly, we need to think about the infrastructure that supports what we do. When we look at the work we do at Kira Motors Corporation and the wider mobility industry, we are thinking three things. Mobility, that is how we move people and the goods. Energy is a requirement for us to move. Where is it coming from? Fortunately, when we go e-mobility, we are not importing the fossil fuels. We make the energy here, and that is fundamental. Because in Uganda, one of the highest import values is actually on energy. We currently import over $2 billion in petroleum to burn in the vehicles. And lastly, the technology. The technology has to be appropriate. It must be fit for purpose. It must be integrated. It must provide a platform for people to keep connected. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Round of applause for Paul and all the great work that the Chira team are doing. And Paul, you mentioned 5 things that's the secret of your success. Number 1, talent. Number 2, parts. You've solved the issue of parts. Number 3, policy. Number 4, infrastructure. And then the last one you mentioned is?
Policy.
Policy. I mentioned policy and infrastructure. And I think you said technology.
So it is talent, which is people. Plants, where do you produce from?
Yep.
Policy.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Round of applause for that. Okay, great. Kevin, you just said right off the bat, and I really respect your honesty, you don't look into whether something is sustainable or climate friendly or compliant first. You look at profitability first, because that's your job as a VC. I like that. So, but my question to you now is, what are you seeing as the industry trends when it relates to things around this space generally?
Okay. Well, there are a number of trends that we monitor. And by the way, just to color what I said, it's not that there isn't a desire to, invest for good, but it's just that when you look at it from a numbers perspective, even if you have a really good solution that only serves 1% of a market, you're not going to have the impact that you need. So being demand driven is how we look at things. So we'd rather have an incremental change in something that affects 90% of a market and have a much bigger impact than just invest in a technical solution that serves 1%, because you don't actually get the change either as a business or from an environmental perspective. That said, we do keep quite a number of trends in view and in focus. So one of them, for example, we really like the energy transition and the mobility space. I mean, I'm not just an investor, but a founder and operator of mobility businesses. And so, just like Paul said, I mean, at the heart, our economies in Africa are built on being traders. And you have to move goods, services, and people around. And so mobility is a really large part of that. That said, I think we're still only in the first innings of mobility. The solutions we're seeing right now, I don't think they go far enough. We're supporting battery swapping technologies or asset finance businesses. There's a much bigger demand and need to have more fundamental technology change. Some of the other trends in the kind of sustainable space that we think are missing, and we hope to have a trend, is really infrastructure and city planning. So my background, I'm a civil engineer by background, and you can get so much more impact by how we organize how we live than just changing from petrol to diesel to electric. And so there's still technologies that can assist with urban planning and mapping that we think could help and transform what we do here in Africa. So those are just two of the trends. And maybe just the third to really speak on it is there's a real opportunity within the logistics and transport space, and we don't think that has been solved yet. As Africa trades more with itself, there really need to be platforms and technologies that can do so in a more green way than that happens today. So those are the 3 trends that we're excited about.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. Now you guys are going to, this is our closing comments, parting thoughts, right? I give you the question, but then I need to ask a question to someone very special in the crowd. So marinate on this question. I'll come back to you guys in a second. One-liners, and the question is as follows for all panelists. Well, 2 questions. What are you most optimistic about in this space? And it can be clean cooking, clean cooling, e-mobility. Just give us the one. And then, what's the one challenge that we need to overcome for us to be successful in the industry? So, your one thing that you think would be a blowout, right? And then the one challenge we need to overcome. But someone I need to recognize in the crowd, and I make this apology for an omission, but we actually have a special guest from the National Environmental Management Authority in the person of Mr. Jerome Lugumira. Mr. Jerome, you're welcome. Obviously, it's important to get perspective of government or the regulators for subjects like this because of the policy issue that you mentioned, Paul. And so since we have him in the house, I thought maybe it would be nice for me to put him on the spot and ask him one question, one very easy question. The question is as follows. Sir, what is government doing to support Uganda climate-focused innovators and startups?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can I sit here or stand somewhere?
However you're comfortable.
I'll prefer to stand here. Just next to you very quickly.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Colleagues, thank you. My name is Jerome Sevaduka Lugumira. I work with the National Environment Management Authority as a specialist for soils and land use. I'm a soil scientist by training, but also the desk officer for climate change in NEMA, and so a delegate on the COP, the COP for the UNFCCC. And so I can give you a very quick snapshot on what government has been doing perfectly since 1993, at the time when the three major COPs, the COP for desertification, the COP for biodiversity, and the COP for climate change were ratified. Uganda was the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to ratify all those three COPs, and indeed actions were put in place through policy reviews and identification of the very quick things that could be fixed, one of which was the demand to mainstream climate change issues everywhere, in every sector. And so that opened the way or the door for the Climate Change Act, which I think is 2016, all about there, that actually tries to talk about the issues you are talking about here. I'm a member of the Climate Change Mechanism Task Force that is intended to put in place regulations, for example, to regulate carbon markets and carbon taxation. And so we have written the regulations that have quite a number of things that you're talking about here. So guidance on how these are traded, guidance on how this is done, and how this is checked. But also, within the same law or act, we have conditioned sectors, because mitigation has to be done at different angles. So at sector, yes, we have under the different NDCs, nationally determined contributions, which are apportioned to sectors. So every sector, and I can tell you, colleagues who are here, the energy sector has been the most proactive, and that's why there is quite a bit of investment in renewable energy. Thanks to the presence or the arrangement in policy where the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development are under one platform or roof. And so the geologists have been able to look for those very different clean energy sources, geothermal, for example, and so we're moving there. And so in terms of arrangements and opportunities, they are quite abundant. We might not need to look at solar energy as a very strong contributor here, but at least we have very good reserves of geothermal energy, and indeed, we have very good reserves of hydropower. So that has been fixed from a sectoral level. And of course, in the agriculture sector, you've said it's the biggest. In fact, agriculture is the biggest degrader. But also, we have in place a very good system to regulate the agricultural activities. The EIA process, for example, is one of the best ways in which we can advise and condition so that there is good reporting under the MRV framework, monitoring, reporting, and verification by sector, by individuals, and by industrialists. So those are some of the very quick things I can talk about here. We would require some bit of more time to delve into the details of some of these initiatives. But at least these are some of the key things that actually government has put forward. Mostly the energy sector, and of course attending towards improvement in agriculture. You have talked about climate smart agriculture. It is promoted. 2001 is when we got the investment framework for the agriculture sector, where it is really promoted. And so we know how much land is actually every year transiting towards climate smart agriculture. Thank you.
Round of applause for Mr. Jerome. And round of applause for Uganda, please. Thank you very much. Government is really important. Now, real quickly, your 3-second responses. What's your favorite sector? What sector do you think would win? And what's the one challenge that we need to address? Ebo?
Yeah, my favorite space in the climate tech sector is, I'd say, electric mobility. So we've invested in a company called Basigo, which finances electric buses in Nairobi. And it's been one of my favorite companies, I would say. And I follow most of the Ugandan electric mobility companies, and it's a very exciting space to see, obviously globally and also locally. So looking forward to seeing our local ecosystem, I guess, maturing, because a lot of these businesses are still early. The biggest challenge, I would say, is around taxation. So I think if you look at China and how China became a leader in electric mobility, there was a lot of government incentives that actually encouraged people to obviously transition into electric mobility, and also supported all these companies to be able to come up with products to address that demand. And so for countries on the continent, actually, we need to figure out ways in which we can incentivize both the consumers and also the companies manufacturing different products in that space to be able to get that inflection point and get the transition going in a massive way. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ebo. Tukam, yours, favorites and one challenge.
I'll say e-mobility. I'm very bullish. Challenge, patience. I think that Rome wasn't built in a day, and sometimes I feel like we're being asked to do what others have taken 20 years to do in one.
Okay. I hope we're going to hear something other than e-mobility. Yvonne?
I guess I'll switch it up a little bit, and I'll go for agriculture. And maybe just to look at it from a different angle, I think I'm optimistic about it because I feel like, to your point, it's one of the sectors that has the largest opportunities for the continent across different countries. And I think there's opportunity for us to actually be very innovative within that sector still, to actually increase the food supply on the continent. But then there's also, I think there's a lot of opportunity for funding to still go into that sector and for us to figure out the different type of solutions that we need to actually improve farming. Now, the challenge that I see there that I think we really need to solve is just finding more, not even just smaller scale, but larger scale solutions across both the farming side, the storage side, but then also processing. Because I think while we're doing good on farming, a lot of the reasons why we have high post-harvest losses is because we don't have the right processing facilities for the different kinds of foods that we can grow. And there's a lot of opportunity there for us to invest in it and also see the results for it on the continent.
Thank you, Yvonne. Peter, last word.
It's hard for me to pick my favorite kid, but if I had to, I'd say direct air carbon capture is quite exciting for me. So there are a lot of biological solutions that we are seeing. But direct air carbon capture really kind of gives us an opportunity to lead not only in terms of geography, but also engineering. The challenge that I see is for all of us to remain coordinated and to continue working in partnerships and in a synchronized fashion to actually be part of the solution, right? We are all looking to solve a very big problem, and I think it's important that we use all our energies and all our talents in a coordinated way.
Thank you. Paul?
Renewable energy.
Thank you. So not e-mobility, huh?
Yeah, certainly when you talk about e-mobility, renewable energy is very, very, very important. And the biggest challenge is how do we store it? So energy storage solutions for renewable energy is a big challenge to Africa, and we need to figure out how we solve it because we have the raw materials here, and we are exporting them out there, and then we are buying the batteries.
Correct.
That's a big thing.
Okay, awesome. Love that. And of course, Kevin?
Okay. I'm just going to focus on the challenge side. And for me, the challenge is shifting mindsets and education. And I see that as one. The reason is innovation is not a technology game at all. It takes a bunch of education. And wherever you look across the world where groups have become very innovative, it is because as a result of education, both formal, but in particular from the private sector, having your corporate partners come to the table. And I say that because, I'm in energy, I've been in energy for many years. Before I was an investor, I spent 20 years in oil and gas as an engineer. But it was only after 10 years that I could effectively begin to think I could innovate within that sector. And so for that to happen, we have to have a mindset shift in innovation. You can't get innovation from stitching together a few programs like incubators. The whole general background population has to start to become more innovative. So that's the challenge we have.
Okay, thank you. That's a wrap. Round of applause for all of the panelists. Thank you so much. Guys, will you come forward? Let's take a group photo and make way for the next panel.
One more round of applause for the panel. We like to clap, guys. Come on. It's almost out of energy, but we're almost done. We've had a really good day with lots of learning, lots of engagement, and so much to listen to. And these are very powerful people, so I think it's an honor to listen to them. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. Please watch the center of our very creative stage.
it is possible to make sure that every seed counts, that every square meter on your farm counts, that every drop of water makes a difference. And you can actually measure it, and by measuring it, you can manage it. Only 3 countries in Africa are allowed by legislation to utilize genetically modified seeds. That is Egypt, Burkina Faso, and in South Africa. Actually, in South Africa, we have forgotten how not to farm with GMOs. And this is why, in terms of production output, we are so competitive, also globally. And when you are competitive on the staple foods, on maize, on wheat, on cassava, you are free to exchange from the food basket for those foodstuffs in which you are not competitive. South Africa will never be able to compete with Uganda when it comes to bananas. This is a better banana producing area than South Africa. But Uganda will probably never be in a position to compete with us on sorghum or on wheat, because our area is better suited because of climate, because of the difference between day and night temperatures. But if the policy environment does not allow you to embrace the latest technologies, your farmers will always be hamstrung.
So, Dr. Theo, how do we leverage on government support and policies? Because this is critical. This has been a debate in a lot of governments. The whole genetic engineering issue is a hotly contested issue.
Oh, it is. It is. I'm no scientist. I'm just a farmer. But I would have loved to interrogate some of the scientists we have met during the last few days here. You know, it does not matter. For science, it does not matter how many scientists work on a program. It does not matter how big is your budget for that program. The only thing that matters in science is evidence. We need evidence-based policies. So if there is a pushback against some technologies, bring the evidence, either that it is bad for climate or planet or biodiversity, bring the evidence, or bring the evidence that it is bad for human health. The problem is that a lot of our policies are based on emotion and on political expediency. Policymakers way too often take the side of a consumer because there are so many more consumers who have votes than producers. So they would rather opt in policies against that, which makes it easier for producers. If I can choose one day, inscripted on my tombstone, I would have chosen this. I would like to be remembered as somebody who stood by science-based policies, science-based politics, science-based decisions on how to feed a world in which we will have 2 billion more people within our lifetimes. And the reason for it is as simple as this. We have no greater battle in our generation than the war on poverty and hunger. And there's only one way to win that war: by creating wealth. Only by creating wealth can you beat up poverty. And there is no sector of the economy of our continent, as there is no sector of the economy of Uganda, that can create more wealth in a shorter space of time on a broader basis than agriculture can. But we will not do that with hand-hoe production and the seeds which were left over by last year's crop. We will have to do it by staying on the cutting edge of new technologies, We must modernize our farming. We must mechanize and digitalize it. And then we must commercialize it, because farming is a business, and the business needs to make profit.
Dr. Theo, thank you very much for that very passionate, factual feedback. To be honest with you, anybody who goes into farming right now without understanding their yields, that touches now on serious genetics, will be at a serious loss and will be wasting their time. Thank you very much. I'll come back to you, Dr. Theo. Thank you. Now, over to you, David Wangolo. You know, my deputy chairman was here talking about climate. And I'm going to touch on climate resilient crops. I want us to discuss that. And also, I want us to discuss precision agriculture and sustainable farming practices. Kindly give me your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Priscilla. Now, the biggest technology in farming in Uganda today is the hoe, the hand hoe. And financiers generally fear production agriculture and want to invest further downstream, you know, in processing and logistics and marketing. The reason is that we use very imprecise methods of production. As Pearl Capital Partners, we've invested in a huge estate of over 5,000 hectares in northern Uganda producing sorghum and maize. Why were we able to do that? We were able to do that because we insisted on precise agricultural practices. Because precise agricultural practices give you the data, give you the knowledge, allow you to map the land, plant exactly as expected, in fact, increase the density of planting, and can enable you project. But I would like to tell you that that investment only turned around after 7 seasons, despite the preciseness of agriculture. So what am I saying? Agriculture production is largely influenced, you know, by weather, by other factors. So when you introduce imprecise usage of agriculture, crop management, of harvest and crop planting, you actually introduce another variable that you're not able to control. And so for us to be able to make investments and finance and project and encourage investors to come here, we must be able to adopt the technologies just in basic mechanizing, but also adopt technologies, you know, in collection of data, use of drones and light technology to be able to assess at a point of a desk, you know, the potential performance of the farm. And we've made these investments precisely because that technology exists. And we encourage other financiers, you know, to come along and open large tracts of land to be able to do that.
Thank you so much, David. Actually, what you're saying is spot on. Unfortunately, or rather fortunately, science doesn't lie. It's about data. Data, data, data. At the end of the day, for you to be bankable, you need to give precise data on your activities. David, thank you so much. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. Enoch, we've touched on data. But we're going to come back again on that data because we're going to talk about data-driven decision-making with you. We need to touch on that because I know your business is highly based on that. We're also going to talk about supply chain transparency, which is a key issue. When I walked in here on Sunday night, the first thing I noted was a small business that had a platform that talked to me about transparency. So that's very important for the industry. And then market access and distribution. Lastly, we're going to talk about agri-tech startups because I know you're key on that area. Go ahead, Enoch. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So regarding data-driven decision-making, it's very important for all value chain players, especially at the level of the investors, to be able to actually understand that there is enough evidence of what activities are happening in the entire supply chain. I'll give an example. With technology, it has been able to be made easier that investors and financiers can easily be able to predict how much yield is going to be produced at what point in time. For instance, you realize that at the point when the farmer is buying any input like a seed, fertilizer, this data can be collected to understand how much they will be able to produce within what particular period of time. And so with this data, it means that those that are going to offtake the product, I mean now the aggregators or the exporters, they're in position to go and secure funding from the investors based on the fact that there is evidence of how much potential yield that is going to be able to be produced out within a particular period of time. So that's how much and how powerful data-driven decision-making is. Then on the other point of talking about value chain transparency, I happen to be able to be an example running an agri-tech company that I had a meeting with one of the potential global buyers in the Netherlands, Amsterdam. And all they need is that they need to sit in their office, look at a screen, and then they're in position to know where their commodity is at what point in time. For instance, they need to understand that, look, at this point, I've placed my order to a potential supplier on the platform, and so within real time, I'm able to know whether the produce is now moving from the farmers to the bulking center, then from the bulking center to the warehouse, from the warehouse to the freight company, and from the freight company to the customer who ordered for the commodity. Then the other thing is that people are very cautious about their health. They want to know what inputs were used during the production of this particular food crop. And so that guarantees them safety and also confidence that what they are going to consume meets the standards that actually they set for their health. So that's how important and value technology has made it easier. And also to the investors that are really making decisions to deploy capital in the supply chain.
Enoch, do you feel that Uganda is at this level yet? Or what would be your parting words to the government of Uganda, the Ministry of Science and Technology, on using these various elements in science and technology to scale up?
So where we are now as a country, the innovators, I know many, and here in Uganda, we happen to have been the first to be able to produce something that can enable to facilitate food exporters to do supply chain management and source traceability at a commercial level. However, where we stand now, we've happened to have issues with the EU banning our commodities to be exported or imported within their economy. And reason they are giving is that they can't trace, they can't give proof. Our suppliers cannot provide proof of what they are going to supply into their countries. And so, the advice I give to our ministry, especially Minister of ICT, of course, Science, Technology, and Innovation Secretariat, is that I think right now it's high time we had a discussion with Minister of Agriculture to embrace innovations that have been produced that can be able to help them tackle the problem that is happening with the EU market, where they are banning our products like chili and others from being exported there because our suppliers cannot offer proof of what they are delivering. We have innovation is in the house now, and so it's a matter of getting onto the table and let us help our country to be able to actually compete favorably with the likes of South Americans that are trading big to these economies because they have been able to embrace these technologies within their supply chains and all the export trade that they are doing. Yeah.
Hello. Do we have somebody from the Ministry of Agriculture? Do we have somebody from the Ministry of Agriculture in here? Okay, I hope that the Ministry of Science and Technology will definitely relay this message. This afternoon, I met a young lady. If you just give me a minute, I want for her to stand up and tell us what she's experiencing, because she's actually going through the same battles. This young lady is a farmer who actually does the full, no, she actually is not a farmer, she's in the processing side of cocoa, okay? She makes chocolates and she processes cocoa. And this afternoon she came to me and told me of the struggles that she's having in making sure that she can get certification. What does that mean? Is that it doesn't matter how much cocoa she processes or chocolates, she cannot export her product. Can I give her a second to just tell us what her issues are, and we can see how we can take this forward after this session. I was truly impressed by what women and the young people of Uganda are doing. This country is rich. This country can feed the continent. You just throw a mango out of the window of the car, and the next thing you have a mango tree. It's amazing. Please, your name again?
Hello, everybody. My name is Wendy Gloria. I'm a chocolate maker, and I'm a Ugandan. I deal in chocolate making. This chocolate is 100% Ugandan. We source our cocoa from Bundubujo, Boyukwe, Kayunga, and Chagwe area, definitely. But I've engaged in the diaspora market, but we have one problem. And for me, before we go into even productivity or helping the innovators, we have found close to three problems, and that is quality. I believe we have the best quality, but it comes with a value chain, and the value chain is about the organic value chain. The American markets will not take up your products if you do not follow the value chain. What do you mean by the value chain? The product must be organically certified. And the problem with us is we think the word organic is natural. It's okay, it's natural. But do you follow the value? The storage where you are storing your goods from, is it organically certified? The production area, is it organically certified? The farmers where you're getting the products from, are they organically certified? And if you do not have all that chain or you follow it, you cannot get the market, the American market as well as the EU markets. And for me, or the young innovators in Uganda, I think we still have a lot to be helped with. Being organically certified takes close to 20,000 USD. That's around 75 million and above. There is also an issue of packaging. No one is going to eat your product from abroad when your packaging is not looking good. People are looking at the physical appearance of the product. I may have the best chocolate, the taste is good, the quality is the best you could ever ask for, but how have it been competing on the shelves with other producers? So that one will throw you out of the market. Taxes and policies in the country. We have a lot of policies that are not favoring us, mostly the young innovators. UNBS, talk of the Uganda Investment Authority, it was here. There is a lot that they need to help us with. And I think with all that, we can be able to compete with what that guy is talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and well done. And Enoch, you have a lot of work. Let's give this young lady a round of applause. And for all the entrepreneurs and the investors in this room, I want to challenge you. Let me tell you, I'm a farmer. Farming is so sexy. Look at her. She is actually a chocolate maker. How many African chocolate makers do we have? And she trained in Belgium. That's not what, she's not told you that. She's trained in Belgium. Let's see how we can actually support these young entrepreneurs. Now, over to you, David. You never told me you had so much money. My dear, Mr. Moneybag is here. When we are done, you have two people. You have him on the market access, supply chain transparency, and support on startups. And David here today will prove to us that he puts his money where his mouth is. So David, your parting words, please.
My parting shots are, agriculture is an 80% employer in Uganda. Or across the region, the demographic is around the same, the statistic is about the same. Now, if we theorize innovation, science, and technology as isolated events, we are not going to get the critical mass of the population innovating, thinking scientifically, and using technology. How do we then do it in the fastest way? We must concentrate a lot of our energy in agriculture as government. That way we can change the mindset of our people, 70% of our people, to think about efficiency and productivity. And in a very short span of time, use those same principles in other spheres of their lives. So this is the importance of agriculture as a mindset change maker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Your words should be taken very seriously. Climate change is a major issue. It's a threat. One of the biggest threats that we were worried about in Kenya was our rice plantation. We were very worried about El Nino. Heavy rains when you've not planned for the rains in regions and areas where there is no rain. So as a government, we need to use science and technology very, very sincerely, deliberately, to make sure that we are food sufficient and we take care of our food security. David, thank you very much. Thank you. Dr. Theo, it's an honor to have you here. For you to take your time out there to be here, we can only tap into your wisdom. I'm honored to have you as my chairperson. And I hope that we can work closely with the government of Uganda as investors in this country and use what you have said, technology and innovation and science as the helm of this. Kindly give us your parting words and what you would want the minister to relay to the president about food security in her ministry. How do we use this? How do we take Uganda to the next level? How does Uganda, as a small country, feed the continent? Because I believe this country can feed the continent. I don't care who says what. We can talk about, there's jurisdictions and all that stuff. This year, some countries in East and Central Africa have suffered famine record. And this country should have been able to feed them. Kindly, Dr. Theo, your parting words.
Priscilla, I once got from my family a Christmas present, a book, 100 Speeches That Changed the World. And when I opened it, it fell open on the speech by Kaiser Showa of the Japanese at the end of the Second World War. And I was fascinated by this idea of a leader addressing his people after they've been destroyed. And I thought, in that speech, he would say, the Americans did it. They must come and fix. There was nothing of it. I could not sleep after I read that speech because he said, never before was this nation in such a predicament. Everything is destroyed. And our people are now maimed and sick and injured. And he said, there's only one way to get out of this. We must work ourselves out of it. So if you are young and strong, you owe it to this nation to take up a job. And if you are untouched, uninjured, take up a second job, work in the evenings too. But if you have the guts, don't take up a job, start a business and create those jobs. But dream with me of a day, 25 or 30 years from now, when Japan must be in a position where no one on the face of the earth can afford it not to do business with us. And some of you who are my age might remember when we were children in the 1970s, early 80s, you could walk into any spaza shop and you would find a product made in Japan. But it was cheap stuff, low technology, unreliable. It was only in 1975 when his follower, Kaiser Miki, rebranded this dream and said, let's turn this brand made in Japan to something exclusive, high technology, expensive, reliable. And that took Japan in only a few years to be the second biggest economy in the world. Whom of you would have believed in the 1980s that China would today be such a dominant player in the global politics and global economy? Is that possible in Africa? I believe in it with every cell in my body through agriculture. I want to challenge the farmers of Uganda to dream with me of a day 25, 30 years from now when produced in Africa will mean the anchor of food security in the world. Yes. And I want to challenge the young people in this room to take up that dream. If your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough.
Wow.
Invest in agriculture because that's the future of our species.
Don't you just want to give him a round of applause? Round of applause. Africa. Africa, here we are. It's not about what your country can do for you. It's about what you can do for your country. Young people, stand up, rise up, and put your country on that helm. Dr. Theo, I've got goosebumps. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm getting a Ugandan ID because I want to do this for Uganda. Thank you, Dr. Theo. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our panel. Thank you so much for being here for us. Before we go, David, I have not asked anybody out there if they've got a question. This gentleman is not easy to find. He landed in Uganda with just one page in his passport. I mean, he is in every country talking about food security. So if you've got your parting question, please ask Dr. Theo, because we don't know when next we're going to see him here. Dr. Theo. Yeah? Okay, no, just one more question. Anybody, or you'll ask later? You're young, you can run, 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 run. Run, run, run. There you go. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Kenneth Mwangozi.
Yes, Kenneth.
Yes, and I want to ask the gentleman in the middle, David.
Yes.
Yes, I heard him talk about a fund.
Yes, $20 million.
Yes. I am very interested. I want to know what organization he works for because there's a way how he mentioned that he's into the business of venture
capital.
Yes, but he didn't say the company.
Yes.
So I want to know what company it is. And I need to know what kind of agricultural investments do you do? Thank you.
David, in a nutshell, please.
The fund manager is called PAL Capital Partners. It has managed funds over the last 15 years. It deploys capital in SMEs that are looking for growth, even in their earlier stages if they can show high growth potential. It invests in the region, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania being core. Ethiopia, Malawi have been other regions that we've deployed capital. And, you know, you can go to our website, www.palcapital.net, and visit us. You know, drop us an email. We'll be able to respond to your proposal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a good evening. We've come to the end of this panel session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Priscilla and the team. Please, one more a louder round of applause for the team on the panel. Can we do the photograph? And then we will close this down.
Science, technology and innovation. Science, technology and innovation. Have you heard about science?
I must do panels with Priscilla. I mean, when you're done, you're getting a hug and a thank you, you know. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here.
Science, technology and innovation. Science, technology and innovation. Have you heard about science, technology and innovation? That's the formula balance equation.
So we have one quick activity to do before we leave. Yesterday we had the schools challenge. For the investors in the room who need to leave, you can actually head out to the cocktail next door. We'll be joining you shortly. Priscilla, you need to stay, and Kumi. We're going to hand over the award to the schools that won the schools award yesterday. I think the schools are here. We're waiting for the Honorable Minister to come back in, and we will then do that. So just give it a few minutes. Melissa, I need your help. Yeah. Dr. Joshua Isiko, please come and take over the activities now. And after we do the handover, the Honorable Minister will be shutting this down. We have a cocktail. If you register to attend the event and you received a tag, the cocktail will be in the Investor Lounge. Unfortunately, if you didn't register, we cannot let you into the space. Dr. Joshua, please, where are you? Just give us a few minutes for us to be able to coordinate this.
Science, technology and innovation. Science, technology and innovation. Have you heard about science, technology and innovation? That's the formula balance equation. Gabiri kumula mwakwa kuchusansi. Mumumpipi transformation. Kugasi ya wongo ya assurance. Kukwa musada importance. Emikwano jigambe banabe tugende morawo musanga Uganda tusimude. Science, technology and innovation. Science, technology and innovation. Have you heard about science, technology and innovation? That's the formula balance equation. Gabiri kumula mwakwa kuchusansi. Mumumpipi transformation. Kugasi ya wongo ya assurance. Kukwa musada importance. Emikwano jigambe banabe tugende morawo musanga Uganda tusimude.
For the investors in the room, we can let you go to the lounge. We have a cocktail starting in a few minutes. And you're welcome to also stay to watch and enjoy the kids receiving their awards. Dr. Joshua, please come to the main space. So with this, we shall be doing the next event in the lounge. We would like to invite the schools to do this activity in the lounge. So thank you very much for being here this afternoon. We shall be closing the event during the cocktail. Let's please go to the investor lounge as long as you received the tag earlier. Thank you very much, and we appreciate you spending your afternoon with us. We look forward to seeing you again, and we will close in the lounge.